In this video, I will be replacing the left and right switches, the scroll encoder, and the side buttons on the Gprox Superlight. This is a very expensive gaming mouse, but it is out of warranty, and now the client wants me to replace the switches which are faulty, and I will be also replacing the stock encoder and the side buttons that I already have here. So these are blue shell pink dot switches, and we have an Alps encoder, and we also have some side buttons from Omron. So I will be disassembling all of these components from this mice and will be installing these new switches and encoders into it. So without wasting any more time, let's jump on to how you can disassemble this mouse. And I have already removed the bottom feet, both sides. And I have to say the feet that were included with this mice were really of bad quality. I have these. These are pretty thin feet, and these are really low quality, very thin. And I would not recommend anyone to reuse them unless it is a compulsion for you. If it is possible, then go ahead and buy fresh new mouse feet of some good quality for your Gprox. Anyway, so I have already removed the feet, and now it's time to remove all of these screws. But before I remove these screws, I would like to mention a really important thing. Right here, I have this little cardboard sheet, and I will be removing all the screws from this mouse and will be placing them in a particular order so that it is easy for me to put everything back again from where I took it. So there are multiple screws in this mouse, and it is really important to place them exactly where they came from. So I will be going ahead with the 3 screws on the top now. So there we have the access to the internals. Now before lifting this upper shell off, it is important to remove this ribbon cable. This mouse is actually really untidy. I'll need to clean it later. And now I will be removing the battery too. At this point, I am going to keep this PCB and the bottom shell away from me because I don't need to work on it. We don't have any sensor problems or anything like that, so I won't need to use this part. I'm going to keep it aside. And now we are on to the top shell of the mouse. This is the part that we need to disassemble, and there are multiple screws that we'll need to take care of. First up, let's remove the front clicks. Yeah, these front bumpers are to be taken off first, and to remove them, we have a total of 2 screws holding each of them. Again, these are different screws, and the first one is already off. The second bumper is also off. I'm making sure to keep everything the way I'm getting them off so that it is easy to reassemble in the end. Now I will be getting this black part out from this mouse shell, and for that I'll need to remove a lot of screws. So I removed 2 from each side. Now there is one hiding in the center. So I guess I have removed all the screws on this side. I cannot see any one remaining. Now we have 1 and 2 screws remaining on this side. This top one is totally different. It is a flat head, I guess. Yeah, this is different. So make sure you are keeping a track of your screws, because you will need to put them back the way you are taking them off. There we go. The last screw is off. And I guess, so there is one more screw that is remaining here at the bottom. And just like that, the top shell is off and we have access to the little main board and the side switches too. So I will be removing this plastic shell that is holding the left clicks, the side clicks. And there we go. Now on this mouse, I'll need to replace these side buttons too. I'm going to get back to these later. First, I will be replacing the left and right clicks. Before taking this PCB off from this black shell, it is important to get this ribbon cable off. And to get it off, you'll need to just unlock this. Maybe you can use your fingernails. And there you go. Now it can be easily taken apart. And now the PCB is free. We can go ahead and remove all these screws. And there we go. There is this little spring that is in place. I hope the camera focuses. Yes, there is this little spring that I'll need to unlatch, and then only I'll be able to attach the scroll wheel. But that is a thing that I will be doing later. So I'm going to keep it aside now. And then I think this is having some glue that is holding this little PCB or maybe these ribbon cables to this plastic shell. So the scroll wheel is off. Again, I'm going to keep it aside. And now we can work on this little daughter board. I'll need to install new switches, new scroll encoder, and some new side buttons too here. And for that, I will need helping hands. At this point, I will go ahead and add a little bit solder to these joints. And to remove them, I'll need to heat all 3 of them together and get the switch out like this. Again, we'll add solder to the other joint. will be holding the switch using the tweezers. And there you go. The other switch is also off. Now it's time to clean the joints. So there you go. We have removed both the left and right switches. And now I will be removing this scroll encoder, which is actually not all that simple. But there is a trick that you can use to remove it. First, it is very important to mount it properly. So basically, the way it will be working for us is the scroll encoder is stuck and these two pins are holding it on the board, and we'll need to push them on the opposite directions and pull the scroll encoder in the other direction to get it off. It might sound a little tricky, and it actually is a little tricky, but after watching this you will get an idea of how you can get it off. A really very important thing to keep in mind is the fact that this PCB is very small and it is not very thick too. So I need to be extra careful when removing this scroll encoder. I just cannot put any extra pressure on this board. Again, I will be adding some fresh solder. Finally, after a bit of hassle, I was able to get this scroll encoder off. It was not easy, and I will surely not recommend anyone who is not experienced enough to attempt this. So ultimately, the way I was able to get it off was I just, used this plier and pushed both of these pins like this and heated the joint while pulling it using this weight, and I was able to get it off. At this point, I need to clean the PCB. You might need to use some solder wick to clean the PCB. You cannot pick up all the solder using the pump. And there we go. So the PCB is now clean, and all we need to do is install the new scroll encoder. Now I will need to add some solder. First, I will be adding solder to the one leg. And I will be again heating this leg up and will try to mount it flat to the PCB. And there we go. And that is how you install a new scroll encoder onto the Gprox. Not the easiest things to do. Obviously it will need some experience, practice, but yeah, I have done this quite a few times and I was able to get it on. Now it's time for the switches. Oh, I think yeah, so I will be mounting the switches first. Now the problem that I'm facing here is the fact that there is still some solder remaining onto these joints. The pump is not sufficient enough to suck the entire solder off these pads. You will need to use the solder wick. Ended up cleaning all these holes properly using some solder wick, and now I can go ahead and install the new switches. A very basic tip that everyone is following when installing these switches is you just need to hold the switch flat to the PCB, add a little bit solder to the middle point and leave it, and then you can add solder to the other joints. And that is how you install switches. It is actually that simple. This is a really very small and thin PCB which can be very easily damaged. I'm trying to be extra careful. Just add a little bit solder to the iron itself. Hold the switch flat. And now add solder to the other joints. And there we go. So at this point we have these pink dot switches installed onto this Gprox Superlight PCB, and we also have a new scroll encoder in place. Finally, we are on to the side buttons, and to remove them I'll need to heat up the two joints, this first one and the other one, and I'll need to use a plier to pull the switch at the same time. This is again not going to be easy, but let's try it out. As usual, I will be adding some fresh solder. This is going to be really difficult to do in front of the camera. So I already ended up removing one of the switches, one of the side buttons, and it was really not easy. Let me show it to you how that is done. You will need to add some fresh solder first. Now I have added solder to this point and this point. Now all I will be doing is I will be heating both these joints together and will be pulling the switch using this. And that is how you remove the side buttons from the Gprox. Now I'll have to clean this mess up. And a very important and quick tip that I would like to share here is if you end up heating these joints a little bit too high, then make sure to add some isopropyl alcohol to get the temperatures down. You can end up damaging these joints. Now I will go ahead and will give them a clean wipe so that all the flux residue is off. And now I will be adding a little bit of solder to my soldering iron. and then we'll be touching the iron to one of the joints. There we go. That is how you resolder a new switch. These are really very small contacts. That is why I am not using a lot of solder and I'm not directly soldering. So one of the switch is in. We'll do the exact same thing on the other switch. And that is how you fix a Gprox Superlight. It was obviously not simple, as I mentioned. You will need some experience to do it, but that is how you do it. Now all that is left from here is I will be putting everything together and will be testing the mouse later.